While scrolling through a cooking group on social media, a post stopped me. A young woman named Jennifer was baking a casserole when the glass dish in the oven broke, sending shards throughout the food she was preparing. Bemoaning the event, she reported it was the very worst day ever. Was a shattered Pyrex dish filled with food really the worst day ever in Jennifer's life? It made me think, what qualifies as the worst day ever in someone's mind? The most famous opening line in a book was that of Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. It quickly rises to the top of the list. He began the book with, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." But then he goes on to write, "It was a season of light and a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope and a winter of despair." The book was about the French Revolution, where, without trial, 30,000 people were executed or died in prison during the Revolution's reign of terror. To me, that tops the list of the worst day ever over a lost casserole. In an Instagram post, a woman named Laura related her visit to Paris. Laura and her daughter Emma were going down the long stairs in the metro. Emma, like many young people, wasn't paying attention to her surroundings because she was laser focused on whatever was happening on her iPhone. A couple of shady guys going up the stairs saw the golden opportunity. One of them grabbed the expensive iPhone, the other snatched Emma's purse, and both of them disappeared in the crowd. With iPhone and passports gone, the mother, in a too broad generalization, complained to the world that Paris was full of pickpockets and the police were no help in resolving their problem. And thus it was their worst day ever. I thought about them when other worst days came to mind. The year is 536 AD. Imagine waking up one morning and seeing what was described as a weird fog outside. The sun was barely visible, and the temperature had dropped significantly from the previous day. Darkness fell over the world. Continuing for 5 years, the temperatures ranged between 34 degrees and minus 36 degrees, causing a major natural disaster where crops failed and drought was everywhere on Earth. The lack of growing seasons resulted in a full-scale famine where millions died. The economy of Europe collapsed, plague ravaged the land, and the disaster continued to 640 AD. Not until the 1990s did scientists discover what had happened. It seems volcanoes had erupted all over the world, cooling the planet, plunging crops into darkness, and causing a disaster that wiped out 55% of the human population and most of its species. Roman historians referred to 536 as the worst year to be alive. The French Revolution's reign of terror and the year 536's incredible geological collapse would definitely qualify as some of the worst days ever in world history. But it's not fair to only use the size of the impact as a qualifier, nor should we use numbers of deaths to determine the worst days, even though those two events had massive impacts. Nor should we diminish Jennifer's casserole explosion, which turned out to be her worst day ever. If you've been in Laura and Emma's shoes where you lost your passport and all your money, and you had to figure out how to navigate home, it probably would qualify as the worst day ever. So who judges what is or isn't the worst day ever? It depends. About 10 years ago, I was introduced to Sri Goenka, the world-renowned founder and teacher of the Vipassana Research Institute in India. I attended his 10-day silent Vipassana retreat, where every evening he gave a teaching lecture. One lecture has stayed with me for the 10 years since first hearing it. I called it the Rolex Lecture, and it really goes to the heart of this story. Sri Goenka told about a man who owned a gold Rolex. The man was very proud of the Rolex, showing it off to everybody he met. It was his prized possession. Then one day, the man came to the temple bellowing, "My Rolex, my Rolex! I lost my Rolex. It's gone. It was my most precious possession. What am I going to do? How could this terrible thing happen to me? This is the worst day of my life." Sri Goenka continued by saying that most people heard the man's story and they were sorry for him. But no one was terribly invested in the loss of his Rolex. After all, it was his Rolex, and it happened to him, not to them. So they really didn't care. He paused a long time before continuing. Then he said, "Now, if it's my Rolex that I lost, well, that would be the worst day ever, wouldn't it?" It's not the Rolex or the casserole or global crop failure or plague. When something happens to someone else, we listen, we detach, and then we step back from it. We even make a judgment about the event as to whether or not it's really the worst day ever. But in the end, it's their worst day ever, not yours. But here the story turns. If an event dramatically upsets your equilibrium, then it suddenly becomes very personal. When it happens to you, then it definitely becomes your worst day ever.